Welcome to Democratic Television, a program of the Santa Clara County Democratic Party that brings insights, perspectives, and attitudes of our always thoughtful Democratic guests. Today we're delighted to be joined by Judy Rickard, a noted author and activist and all-around good person. And Judy, thanks for being on Democratic Television.
Thank you, Steve. Thanks for the introduction.
Sure. Well, so you've written a book.
I have. I wrote a book that is just coming out now, and it's called Torn Apart, United by Love, Divided by Law. And it's a massive love story and a group of stories that some people say are very sad. I want to emphasize that they're the stories of love. They're the stories of people like me, an American citizen who has a partner who is the same gender and not an American citizen. And a lot of people think that that's not an issue, but it really is. And I'm really embarrassed to say I didn't know it was that big of an issue before it was my issue. But because of U.S. Defense of Marriage Act, federal marriage law, and because of U.S. immigration law, people like me cannot sponsor our same gender partners for immigration to the United States.
Okay, well, we are going to talk about the book, maybe have a reading or two. Who knows where this is going to go?
Well, yeah, let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. Before we get to that, let's get to know Judy. Judy, where are you from? Where'd you go to school?
Well, I was originally born, well, not originally born. I was born in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
But I only stayed there a couple of weeks because I was an adopted infant. And I actually was a pre-arranged adoption, which in 1947, when my birth mother was pregnant, was very unusual. So my parents, who were going to adopt me, moved to San Jose because my dad got a job teaching in San Jose and had to be here for the start of the school year.
Oh.
So before I was born, they moved to San Jose. And then, as it often happens, my mother did get pregnant finally. And so then they had to decide if they were going to continue to adopt me or not. They did. And so they ended up having 2 babies within 7 months.
Wow.
So it was kind of crazy in those days. But I've been in San Jose since January of 1948. I went to San Jose schools, I went to San Jose State University, and I'm very proud of my hometown that I consider San Jose.
Well, San Jose is very metropolitan. A lot of things are happening, and
It is.
not the least because this is your roots.
Well, a lot of things are happening because of work that I've done with good Democrats, and I'm proud of that.
Well, and those are things we'll talk about.
Yeah.
But let's talk a little bit more about the early years. So here you are, you've written a book, you have been an activist, helped found an organization like BAMAC, done wonderful things. Did you have any heroes when you were growing up, or anybody that you would say, because of him or her, I am the way I am now, committed to social and economic justice?
Yeah, you know, I think it sounds almost like a throw-off to say, but when I was in junior high school in the early 1960s, I was really impacted by what I was beginning to see as an aware person in the Nixon and Kennedy campaign. And my parents were lifelong Republicans. And so at dinner I would talk about what I had read in the paper or heard on the television, and I just couldn't get Nixon. And so I was listening to what Kennedy said, and I would bring up questions and comments at dinner, and it really put my parents on the spot. And then, you know, as things developed, and I took more courses in high school and then became a political science minor at San Jose State, I got more interested in politics and how politics worked, and I registered Democratic when I first registered. And over the years, as I came out as a lesbian and as I did continue to do work on equality and civil rights issues, my parents ultimately did change their registration to Democratic, and both of them voted openly as Democrats when they were age 75.
Well, that's great.
So it's an interesting story.
So your influence is both far and wide and very
I
narrow.
think so. I
Yeah.
think my parents would have said that was why they changed.
So you were raised with almost a twin.
I was.
Very close in age.
Yeah.
Were there other siblings besides your sister?
No, just my sister Joan, who's 7 months younger than I am,
Uh-huh.
and myself. although when I was age 56, I did find my birth father. And prior to that, I had found my birth mother, but she didn't want to meet me. And she was ill at the time and said that nobody knew about me. And she didn't want to meet me. But when I met my birth father, he was thrilled. He was ecstatic. He never knew I existed.
Oh.
He had lost contact with his fiancée and didn't know about me. And when I met him and his current wife, he had lost his earlier wife to cancer. They were thrilled. And so now that Karen and I both know him, we have, new parents in America, and
Wow.
we have a great whole new family tree.
And are they local? Are they in the
They're
West
in
Coast
Oregon.
somewhere?
They're in
Still near
Oregon. They're in
Portland or
Salem, Oregon.
Salem.
Yeah. And I also have 3 half-brothers that I've met. And a half-sister that I had died before I could meet her. She died early. But I now have nephews and nieces and other family through my new bonus mom, I call her. So
Well, that sounds great.
I have a crazy family tree and life story.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of insights that you picked up along the way.
And a lot of people that hear about things from my perspective too. So it's been interesting.
Now, you have a family tree in this area of people that some people are supportive of you and your life course, and other people that probably aren't so supportive.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in 1973, when I came out, and I was a late bloomer, I always feel kind of embarrassed that I didn't quite get who I was, what it meant, until I was 26. But that was just what was authentic for me. I wouldn't have had the ability to do anything about being a lesbian at an earlier age. So
Now, are you saying that because of the support that's out in the community now versus what was then, and what's acceptable and all that?
That's a big aspect of it. There's much more education, much more information, much more support, much more acceptance. I'm not going to say it's ordinary, but it's a lot more ordinary than it was, back in the 70s, even here in the Bay Area. I thought we had an earthquake there.
Sometimes we do.
So I was kind of the lone stranger in the 70s. My parents didn't know what to think. My sister certainly wasn't a lesbian, and I had issues with things that were going on in Santa Clara County, and there was a lot of activity. Anti-gay activity.
A lot of hate stuff. And
a lot of hate
ballot measures came up in the later 70s.
We had the Briggs Initiative, and we had the Propositions A and B, and turns out that my cousin with the same last name, who was the minister of a large church in Los Gatos, was the ringleader with other people of the anti-gay stuff, and that just crushed me. I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And so I wrote him a long letter, and I told him why he was wrong and that I would like to discuss things with him. And he got back to me and said that he was going to be out of town for a while, so we never did meet on that. But he said he was shocked that he would get a letter like that from a member of his family. And so things were still happening, and I decided I was going to try and see if the Office of Human Relations could help. And so I made several phone calls to Jim McEntee, who was then the director of the Office of Human Relations.
Right.
And I said I wanted to talk to him about the issues that were going on, and I never could get a hold of him. They wouldn't respond. Of Jim. And so I went down there and asked to see him, because I wasn't getting my phone calls, returned. And so they finally let me in there, and he was kind of not friendly, and I didn't know him at the time, but I know that that's very atypical of Jim McEntee.
Very atypical.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I said, I really want to talk to you about what's going on with all the gay stuff that's happening. And he said, well, your people have been here. And I said, my people? I don't have any people. And he said, well, people from the Los Gatos Christian Church have been here. And I said, oh, please. I said, I'm not those people. That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about the anti-gay stuff and the stuff that's been happening and the hate that's, growing. And so it was very funny, as we got to know each other, and over the years we'd see each other at marches and rallies, and dinners and all kinds of events on the same side.
Right,
So,
exactly.
yeah.
Well, that's a great story about a very great.
And I mention him in the back of my book. He and Shorty Collins and Darlene Krause and Gertrude Welch are great, great Democratic Party South Bay Area heroes.
Yeah.
Great impact on my life and many others.
Yeah, real legends.
Yeah.
So when did things get more heated for you? You came out as a lesbian
When I was 26.
in Santa Clara County at a climate that was mixed at best.
Mixed at best,
Yeah.
yeah. And my first partner was Hawaiian Chinese from Hawaii. And I didn't really understand at the time that we were being subjected to is a generic term. We faced ethnic and cultural discrimination as well as sexual orientation discrimination, but I was not really getting it like she did, and I couldn't really understand when she felt like even people close to me, didn't really see her the same way I did. So I feel like a late bloomer in a lot of areas now. I've been personally exposed to sexual orientation discrimination. I've been exposed because of my partner to ethnic and cultural discrimination. It's something that so many people face and that I wouldn't necessarily have faced unless I had ended up in those categories, and people box people in, they look at someone, they judge them by size, by color, by what they're wearing, by, someone wears something like this and they say, oh, and they decide what they think about them by signs like that.
Right. All outward.
Yeah.
Not getting to know us.
Yeah. And my second partner was blue-eyed blonde, but she had issues, and then ultimately turned out that she said she wasn't really a lesbian.
Oh.
And, I've never had that happen.
Oh.
She actually told me after we'd been together for 5.5 years that she didn't want to be seen in public with me because people would think we were a lesbian couple. And I said,
Well, she had
but
a
we
point.
are, so you never know what's going to happen.
Wow.
Well,
we're going to take a little break right now. When we're going to come back, we're going to speak to you as an author,
thank you.
which you apparently are.
I am.
Oh, cool. We'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Pierluigi Oliverio, City Council member from the City of San Jose, and I'm asking you today to become involved in your local Santa Clara Democratic Party. When we act locally, we have the ability to change things on a larger level, and that organization exists today for you to volunteer, whether it's small or large, small time commitment, big time commitment, but the idea is there's an organization ready to put you in to work to assist with the democratic ideals, whether it be healthcare, whether it be environment, whether it be independence from foreign oil, having an economy that rises everyone. Things that we believe are good for our society locally are great at the national level. And now, coming up as an election year, this is the right time to get involved. So, put your best foot forward and pick up your telephone and call 408-445-9500. Do it today, do it soon, do it now. Let's help the Democratic Party. Thank you.
Welcome back to Democratic Television, and we're having an interview, a great interview so far, with Judy Rickard, who has recently written a book, Torn Apart. This is it, and not many people on this show have written books,
Really?
but you're one of them.
Well, I'm thrilled.
I'm thrilled to have this here, and the longer I hold it, the more I feel the information is seeping in. So it's not exactly a Kindle, but it's working for me.
All right. That's good to know.
Thank you. So we talked a little bit about the early years. After you got graduated from San Jose State, what line of work did you fall into? Or
I was in educational audiovisual publishing, and I was in that field for a while. And as I was working full-time, I went back to San Jose State and got a master's degree in mass communications.
Oh.
So I thought that I wanted to teach college journalism. But that didn't turn out. And so I continued in publishing and related areas and ended up working at San Jose State for almost 30 years
Oh.
as the marketing director for International and Extended Studies, which is the continuing education program.
Oh, wow.
So I worked there until I took early retirement so that I could be with my partner Karen because of the immigration situation that we faced.
Well, let's talk about that. So, what happened? What's this torn apart stuff? Why don't you kind of lay the stage?
Well, I don't think it's any secret that I've been a lesbian for a long time.
Well, it's not on this show.
No, certainly not. But even though people are gay or lesbian or know gays and lesbians or people in the LGBT community, to make it broader, there's a subset of that community that faces a horrendous problem. And it's now my problem, our problem, because my partner is not a U.S. citizen. And so as a U.S. citizen, I cannot marry Karen and have a federally recognized marriage because of Defense of Marriage Act, DOMA. And
that specifically prohibits
that specifically
union.
says marriage in the United States is one man, one woman.
Got it.
Okay? And because DOMA, which was signed in 1996, signed into law by then President Bill Clinton, says that we cannot be spouses, I cannot sponsor her because she's not my immediate relative, as the immigration law says. Immigration law says you can sponsor immediate relative or spouse. Well, that lets me out. That lets the entire LGBT same-sex binational community out. And Steve, there's an estimated 36,000 families like mine in the United States today. And that's from the 2000 census. So we know the number's not that. And we also know that, people don't always report. So it's probably a larger number.
Well, so that's tens of thousands of people that
And families
but for
with
this
children.
backwards law.
Yeah.
So, not to hand you an obvious question, but what are you doing to get the law changed?
That is an obvious question, but I'm glad to answer it. Well, I've written the book, which is the only book of its kind. It's a handbook for people who want to hear about couples that are affected by this, and it has pages and pages of resources so that anybody can become an activist or advocate for our issue. What we need is either the Defense of Marriage Act, DOMA, to be ruled unconstitutional in the court, as it's, possibly going to be, or it needs to be stricken by Congress, or we need Uniting American Families Act to pass, or a comprehensive immigration law which embeds Uniting American Families Act, like Mike Honda's law, Reuniting Families Act, has done.
Well, Congressman Honda has showed an interest in this from the beginning, and I think that's because of your and Karen's successful lobbying.
Well, what happened was he was working on a comprehensive immigration law, and then I went to tell him our story, and he didn't realize that piece. And so he embedded Uniting American Families Act into his law. And now, recently, Zoe Lofgren has stepped up and publicly led a group of 46 representatives to write a letter to President Obama and Secretary Napolitano, also urging relief in this area.
What are the chances?
I'd like to say they're very promising because I think Americans, elected office Americans and general Americans, are going to see what this is doing to other Americans. But with a House that's not currently, Democratic led, I don't know.
How has your book been received?
It's been very well received. I've had reviews from great places, including Publishers Weekly, which astounded me. And people are writing me the most amazing notes and telling me how it's changing their lives, how it's giving them hope, how it's awakening them to a problem they didn't know about. It makes me feel very gratified.
Did you know when you started this how deep the problem was? And did you know a number of other couples that fit the profile of you and Karen?
I think I'm going to have to say no, but I quickly learned.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one couple here I've known for a long time, and I knew about their issue, but I knew about it mostly when it wasn't my issue. And, that's how things happen. But Leslie Bolbuck and Marta Donaire are here in the area, and they've been working on this for a long time. In fact, Sally Lieber worked on it for a long time with them.
When she was in
When
the
she
assembly.
was in the assembly, yeah. Although it would only been state. You know, we really need federal help on this. But the state of California, I'm proud to say, has stepped up, and they've had a resolution, and some of the counties and cities here have had resolutions urging Uniting American Families Act and relief for couples like mine. So I'm very proud of our Democrats.
Now, the folks in your book, are they local people? Do you have people from around the country that have stepped up?
I have people from around the country as well as people who have had to leave the country, and we call them love exiles. The only reason they're out of the country is because they can't legally be here together.
And now that sounds like something that you and Karen have gone through too.
Yes, we have.
Could you detail a little bit of that so
Yeah.
that people understand the real impact on real people?
Yeah, well, when I fell in love with Karen, I didn't realize that this was going to be, you know, the menu for the rest of our life. I knew she had a visa. I knew she wasn't an American citizen. But at the time that you're getting involved with someone, you're not necessarily thinking about the downside of things. So we had to leave the country either individually or together. And for the first few times, it was for short times. And it wasn't bad. We were together. But then she had to leave on her own for 6 months because I was still working. And so we were separated. And then we came back together while I had visited her in Europe, and she was detained for an hour and a half in San Francisco airport and put in a cell and questioned. And then she was told that she was visiting America too often and that she would have to get her affairs in order and that she had only 4 months to visit this time. And they told her that she would have to stay out for a long time. But they didn't specify what a long time was. So at that point, I knew that I was going to have to take early retirement or we were going to have to break up because nobody wants to be in a relationship and be in different countries. I mean, that just doesn't make sense. So that's what happened. And so in May of 2009, I took early retirement, which means I have reduced income now. I have a smaller pension for the rest of my life. And I drove to Canada and I met Karen and we spent some time in Canada and then they allowed her in. They gave her another 6 months and we've been doing what I call yo-yo, existence. Until now, we're here. She's come back in. She's here for 6 months now and we hope that the laws will change and that we can make an impact so that we can stay together here.
So you can't marry her?
I cannot marry her in a federally recognized marriage.
So the marriages that have taken place when it's, quote, been legal, you couldn't participate in that?
In fact, we were advised not to marry because that would be a red flag for immigration. Because it would look like Karen had a reason to stay here, to overstay her visa, because she was married to me.
So you just can't take the next step because of all this. You're really in suspense.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you're two vibrant people in love, spending as much time as you can together.
Yeah, and what we're going to do is we're going to challenge the law and see what happens. And we may have to leave the country. If we can't stay here together, we may have to leave the country
Are
together.
you saying if you lose your lawsuit or your case?
Yes. The only option we have is to challenge existing law, and if they don't agree that we should be able to stay here, then we'll have to leave.
Now, are there other cases like this that are winding their way through the court systems?
There are. In fact, there's a case of two men at Princeton University, and the one who is originally from Venezuela is facing deportation on May 6th.
Oh,
So, I mean, that's, at the time of this taping, that's very...
yeah, that's right around the corner. Are they in the book too?
They are not. They didn't respond to my questionnaire.
At time.
But there's a couple that were saved from deportation when a federal immigration judge in New York respected their marriage and did not deport them. And so now we're going to see what happens to that couple. Happens to be a lesbian couple. And the woman was from Argentina. And we'll see what happens to them.
Because there are so many families in this circumstance, I'm surprised that yours was the first book that's really helped detail the impact of this discrimination.
Yeah. You know, I think, Steve, that one of the problems is that people that are living in fear don't necessarily think they have hope. And the other problem is they may not want to bring the attention to themselves. And then, to be quite blunt, everybody can't write a book and get it published. So that aspect of it was just lucky for me because I happen to know a publisher. Karen's ex-husband is Findhorn Press publisher. And so that worked out well for us because he really wants to help get the law fixed. But there's a couple in Pacifica, which is not far from here, and they have 2 teenage boys, and they're not safe. And they have been big lobbyists now in Washington, D.C., and the young men will actually ask senators and congressmen, how are you going to help keep my mom here in America? It's wonderful. So talk about teaching these kids how to get out and do political activism.
So if people are interested in working with you on this, or you and Karen, do you have some contact information?
I do. It's on the back of the book, actually.
Okay. Well, here.
Yeah.
Your eyes are better than mine.
The Torn Apart website and blog is http://tornapart.findhornpress, FINDHORN press.com. And if you want to email me directly, my book email is Judy, Judy, @findhornpress.com.
So it's that simple.
It's that simple.
And if you have people contacting you, you'll figure out how best to deploy them.
I can give them resources. I can see if they want to write letters, make phone calls. One of the easiest ways for anybody to help is to tell your story. And if you can't tell your story, tell my story. You know, I'm out, so you can tell my story.
Great. Well, Judy, thank you very much for being on Democratic Television, and I look forward to a great epilogue.
Thank you. Glad to come.
Thanks for watching Democratic Television. Give us a call at 408-445-9500 or visit our website, www.sccdp.org. And we'll see you on the campaign trail.